The village of Umoma was buzzing with Christmas excitement. The scent of fried chin-chin, jollof rice and fresh palm wine filled the air as everyone prepared for the biggest celebration of the year. But this Christmas was unlike any other. It wasn't because of the new street lights funded by Chief Okafor or the choir's endless rehearsals for the Christmas carol service. No, it was because of him. He arrived on December 20th, stepping out of a dusty Sienna bus, pulling a shiny black suitcase. His name was Chibuzo, and he claimed he had just returned from Vietnam. The whole village came alive with whispers. Chibuzo, the one who lives abroad, has come home. He lives in Vietnam. They say Vietnam is very far. The boy must be so rich now. Did you see his sneakers? Original Nike. The women in the village couldn't stop talking about him. The men, on the other hand, were annoyed by how he walked with an air of superiority, like someone who owned the world. But none of this compared to the real reason why Chibuzo became the center of attention: the black suitcase he carried. The day after his arrival, Chibuzo called a group of young men to help him carry the suitcase into his uncle's house. As they struggled with the weight, he casually mentioned, "Careful, oh, inside are raw donor heads straight from Vietnam." The young men paused. Raw donor hair? Cut from Oyibo people's hair? Chibuzo, you are highly connected though. They have heard about it on social media, but seeing it in real life was a different thing entirely. By the evening, the news had spread like wildfire. The village girls couldn't stop imagining themselves wearing wigs made from raw donor hair, the kind they saw on Instagram videos. Chibuzo didn't waste time. By the next morning, he was sitting outside his uncle's compound, displaying wigs on the table like a professional salesman. He called out to someone passing by, "Come and see original donor hair, oh. Vietnamese quality. I brought it all the way from abroad." The wigs were glossy and perfectly arranged. He even sprayed a sweet-smelling perfume on them to add to their glamour. The ladies were obsessed. Adora, the most beautiful girl in the village, was the first to approach him. She flipped her braids dramatically and asked, "How much is one of your hair?" Chibuzo leaned back in his chair, smiling like a man with a secret. "Ada baby, these wigs are not for sale. They are Christmas gifts. I only give them to special people." Adora's heart skipped. "Special people? What do you mean?" Chibuzo lowered his voice. "Come back later tonight. I will explain better." That night, Adora returned, and true to his word, Chibuzo gave her a wig and whispered promises of taking her to Vietnam. By the next morning, Adora was walking around the village with her brand new wig, tossing her hair like a city girl. Other girls noticed and flocked to Chibuzo's house. Each time he would lure them with sweet words, give them a wig and promise them a ticket to Vietnam. Before long, the girls began fighting over him. "Chibuzo promised to marry me first," one shouted. "You? With your flat legs? I beg, go and sit down," another one replied. The village men were furious. No one paid attention to them anymore. Their girlfriends, fiancés, and even wives were all over Chibuzo. Christmas Day was the peak of the madness. Chibuzo's uncle's compound was filled with young women carrying food warmers, each trying to outdo the other with the best fried rice and chicken. Some even brought wines and drinks. When it was time for Chibuzo to leave, he had already told all the ladies and said, "I will come back in 3 months. Get your passport ready. Vietnam awaits you." The girls screamed in excitement. Unknown to them that he promised everyone the same thing. The entire village waved him off as he entered the same dusty Sienna bus he arrived in. But months later, the truth started unraveling. One by one, the girls realized they were pregnant. Fathers began arguing with their daughters. Mothers cried over the shame. The worst part, the wigs that had caused so much drama started to fall apart. Combs couldn't get through them, and the raw donor hair became tangled and rough.
highlifeng.com.
3 months after Chibuzo left, Ejike, a young man from the village who worked in Lagos, came home. He couldn't make it during the Christmas season and had promised to come in the new year. He was shocked to see the chaos in Umuma. Everywhere he turned, there were talks of pregnancy and fake wigs. Curious, Ejike began asking questions, wondering if it was the same Chibuzo, the very one that stays in Lagos just like him. Then he opened up. Chibuzo had never been to Vietnam. He works as a security guard in a Lagos factory that produced cheap synthetic wigs. The suitcase he carried was filled with factory rejects he had collected for free. Ejike wasted no time in revealing the truth to the villagers. As the women processed their shame and heartbreak, the men laughed at how easily their rival has fooled everyone. The chaos in Umuoma had reached its peak. Families of the pregnant girls were foaming with anger, and the elders of the village could no longer sit by and watch. The king, Igwe Ezudo, called a council meeting and summoned Chibuzo's uncle, Uncle Ikenna, to the palace. Ikenna, the Igwe began, his voice deep, echoing in the grand palace hall. Your nephew Chibuzo has caused great disgrace to this community. He must return to face the consequences of his actions. You are his closest relative here, and it's your responsibility to bring him back immediately. Uncle Ikenna, visibly sweating, stammered, Igwe, my hands are clean. I didn't know Chibuzo was capable of such deceit, but I promised to do my best to reach him. The elders, led by Chief Okonkwo, decided on a cunning plan to lure Chibuzo back to the village. They knew Chibuzo was greedy and obsessed with money. The message was sent. The village had secured funding to open a new hair factory, and Chibuzo was chosen to manage it due to his expertise in the hair business. When Chibuzo received the message in Lagos, he couldn't believe his luck. He imagined himself as the owner of a massive factory, making money and living like a king. Without hesitation, he packed his bags and boarded the first bus back to Umuoma. As soon as he arrived at the village, the girls who were pregnant for him were alerted. They gathered in front of the king's palace, their faces filled with anger, sadness, and shame. Each one of them had a visible baby bump, a painful reminder of the lies they had fallen for. Chibuzo entered the palace compound with his usual swagger, thinking he was about to receive a hero's welcome. But the moment he saw the crowd of pregnant girls, his smile vanished. The king, seated in his high throne, pointed his royal staff at Chibuzo. Chibuzo, the Igwe began, his voice heavy with authority. You have brought shame to this village and ruined the lives of these young women. As a man, you must take responsibilities for your actions. You will marry each of these girls and take care of the children they bear for you. Chibuzo's mouth fell open. Marry all of them? Yes, the king thundered. That is your punishment for deceiving them. You will take full responsibility for their children and provide for their families. The crowd murmured in agreement, and the girls, though furious, nodded, feeling some form of justice was being served. That night, Chibuzo sat in his uncle's house, sweating profusely. He couldn't believe what was happening. Marry all of them? How will I survive this? He said to himself. While everyone in the house slept, Chibuzo packed his bags quietly. He tiptoed out of the house, careful not to make a sound. As soon as he reached the main road, he flagged down a passing motorcycle and disappeared into the night. By morning, the news spread like wildfire. Chibuzo had run away. The king was furious, but there was little he could do. Chibuzo left and never returned to the village again. Each family was left to deal with the consequences. The parents of the pregnant girls bore the burden of raising their grandchildren. The once vibrant girls of Umuoma had learnt a painful lesson. They realized that not all that glitters is gold, and that the promises of a
highlifeng.com.
smooth-talking man can sometimes lead to disaster. The village men who had been overlooked during the Christmas drama took this as a victory, seeing how cheaply the ladies they admired fell for something as small as a raw donor wig. And as for Uncle Ikenna, he was too ashamed to stay in the village. He moved to another town just to escape the ridicule. What's the moral lesson of the story? The lesson is simple. This Christmas, let Chibuza's story serve as a strong warning. Not all that glitter is gold. And not every flashy man who comes home for the holidays have good intentions. Some came bearing lies wrapped in shiny packages, promising the world but leaving behind heartbreak and chaos. This season, don't be carried away by their sweet words, expensive clothes, and big promises. Set your standards. Protect your dignity. And remember that your worth is far greater than any donor hair or empty dream of a broad life. Zip up, stay safe, and make wise decisions. Let no one use the festivities of Christmas to steal your future. Be vigilant and always remember, it's better to wait for the right person than fall for the wrong one. Merry Christmas in advance.